It's never a waste of time to make time for the truth. A moment spent listening and paying attention to the truth can change your life. So let's take a moment for the truth. Psalms 119:35 says, "Make me walk in the path of your commandments, for I delight in it." The truth that the psalmist states in this verse, the Apostle Paul himself confessed in Romans 7:18. "For I know that good does not dwell in me, that is, in my flesh. For the willing is present in me, but the doing of it is not." As I mentioned before, this section of verses in this psalm speaks to the dependence that the saint of the Lord realizes. Paul declared that, in that he had a willingness to live God's way, but he lacked the ability on his own to fulfill it. The same is seen in this psalm. If you recall, in the previous verses of this psalm, you heard the writer declaring his plea for the Lord to teach him and then to grant him understanding. Now, each of these are confessions of a dependence on the Lord to supply what he himself is unable to fulfill on his own. I like how one writer said it. He said, "This is the cry of a child that longs to walk, but is too feeble, of a pilgrim who is exhausted, yet pants to be on the march, of a lame man who pines to run." This inability would lead to frustration, failure, and resignation to that failure if it were not for the ability and provision from God. That's why this writer knows where to direct his request. The verse begins, "Make me walk." Other translations say, "Direct me," or "Help me walk." Now, the reason for this difference is the simplicity of the original, which is simply a single word. The easiest way or simplest explanation that I could think of is that of assisted direction. Having been taught in verse 33, having gained understanding, verse 34, he asked for assistance to walk in the direction that God has stated. The Apostle Paul later spoke of this same operation where trust in God and living it out comes together. He states it in Galatians 2:20, where he says, "I've been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me, and the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself up for me." The relationship that exists between the child of God and their Lord is one of dependence and God's provision. God implants the desire in their heart of his children, all of them. The writer acknowledges this when he says, "For I delight in it." Too often the saint wearies themselves seeking to fulfill this desire on their own. Instead, we should go to the source of that desire. It's the only place where that ability is provided in ways that freely admits where its source is. Ask the Lord to direct your walk today. It only takes a moment, but it will be a moment that will matter. Thanks for watching and listening to Truth Matters Moment. Also, don't forget to look for our weekly podcast called Truth Matters. It comes out every Wednesday. Catch you later.